Welcome to the Real Disclosure Conference, 2-day conference. Really excited for today, and we're gonna have a lot of fun. We have a lot of incredible information.
Unless we have teleportation, you still have to move a lot of goods from place to place. But I think that opens up the field to a whole new thing. I think the arrival of ET and ET technology, I think a whole new change in consciousness. I just interviewed this woman, Dahlia Burgine, who sees through blindfolds. What the human potential movement is doing is just fantastic. They're teaching telekinesis, and they're teaching, this one guy says he can hold a light bulb and light it up with his intention. So this is human potential on a whole other level that in a way we've been denied, but also something about activating the consciousness of what we really are and removing this idea of subjective and objective realities is how I think ETs perceive reality. There's no object subject. It's like quantum physics. There's no objective reality. The observer is influencing reality and becomes a subjective part of what that's being observed. I mean, there can't be a separation. So we've been taught to think in this dualistic understanding of this and me and thou and this and that. And there really is a breakdown of duality. Even people like Donald Hoffman say time and space are doomed. So this is a whole new world that we're entering. And I think it's probably the most exciting time in human history thus far. So
I agree 100%. The whole objective subjective reality, that's such a good point, because we're realizing that this world is definitely real. There's literally objects in front of us, we can interact with it, but we're realizing that the physics that makes up all these objects are actually subjective reality, and the math doesn't check out. Right, so we're in the in-between phase right now, where we're realizing that all the equations, if you will, that we have constructed to create this reality don't check out on the subatomic level, and that we are now piercing. What I like to say is we're piercing through the veil of the construct of this reality, and realizing there's so many different aspects. I love, like, one of my favorite quotes. It's not like a direct quote, but that whole concept of magic is just science that hasn't been proven yet. You know what I mean? And like, that's pretty much what it is. Like, if you think of somebody in like a movie where they're doing magic and they just manifest something in front of them, you think of it as magic, but then when you look at it as subatomic, you realize that this is all basically code, and we are the script writers, we're the coders, we're the directors. Can we get to a level of consciousness where we're able to shift and manipulate the code of the reality?
I found that the Hopi had a lot of phenomenal prophecies that really seemed to resonate with me, and I began to see a lot of this, their prophecy was really coming to pass. And so I discovered the Hopi prophecy of, this World Wide Web. And to go back in time a little bit, let me start there first, because I think it's more relevant to give a little bit of a preface before I get right into it. So I would say back in 1997 is the first time that I actually saw the World Wide Web exist. I had read about it in 1992 in a Hopi prophecy that the world will be connected by this invisible web and information will travel to and fro. And they said that the Hopi elders spoke of a vision of vast web spreading across the entire planet, connecting all peoples in an invisible network of threads. And they said that through this web, humans would communicate instantly across great distances, sharing thoughts, images, knowledge in ways never thought possible, and that humanity will exist in two worlds simultaneously: the natural world of the earth and the sky, and the artificial world woven from invisible threads, neither fully present in either realm. And when I read that, I didn't really understand the technology aspect of it. I just thought that if this was a true prophecy and it really could come to fruition, that one day everyone on the planet would hear my voice. Because by the time I read this, I was decades into research and I didn't have anybody to talk to. But I said, if I live to that era, if it's real, if this prophecy is real, then the world would hear my voice. And the prophecy described the final test for humanity, a moment when the web would serve as both a bridge and barrier, awakening and enslavement, offering one last chance to remember the spiritual law before the purification and transition into the fifth world. because as all the ancient indigenous peoples from all around the world have said, we have lived through 4 worlds and we're heading into the 5th. And this is the age of Aquarius, the beginning of the age of Aquarius. And we are now heading into this 5th world. So what happened was in 1997, I was watching an NBA game of all things. It was Michael Jordan was playing on a Saturday afternoon. And during this game, a commercial comes on, all black screen, IBM, then a small .com. Now, I knew what IBM was, but I didn't know what the .com part was. And it was all black screen, no sound, no words, no colors. That was it. 15 seconds, it stayed on the screen like a moment of silence, and then the commercial was gone. Now, at the time, I owned a marketing agency, I sold TV ad space, so I knew how much that costed. I was like, okay, that was kind of weird. Maybe it was an error. It came on again, then it came on a 3rd time. Okay, now I said, I need to find out what this is because this is expensive to put on during an NBA finals. So I went to the bookstore and I asked the receptionist, yeah, I saw this commercial that said IBM.com. Do you know what this .com means? And she said, oh, in that section over there, the World Wide Web. I go, the World Wide what? She said, the World Wide Web. I go over to that section and I realized that the time had arrived, that I had lived to see an era where the Hopi prophecy had been fulfilled. And so we're talking about this connection between the Hopi prophecy and even the red and blue Kachina prophecy. And that first prophecy being fulfilled of the World Wide Web coming into fruition in my own lifetime, I realized that I need to study these Hopi prophecies because if this happened so eloquently and so specific, then what other prophecies do they have? So I got really deep into the Hopi blue and red Kachina, which is the end of the 4th world and the birth of the 5th. I also learned about it from the Mayans. And so the ancient wisdom is going to meet modern revelation. Sacred cycles are going to converge with cosmic signs. And these cosmic signs are going to appear where? In the heavens, in space. And so that really had me intrigued because by the time I got really deep into the Kachina, blue and red Kachina prophecy, it was now the era of me gaining knowledge because it was the beginning of the information age. So I was able to research things 10 times faster than I was in the early 90s. And I was beginning to realize that some of the terminology they were using was technological or cosmological. And in this particular case with the red and blue Kachina, I started thinking, could there be an invasion? Is there going to be some type of sighting in the heavens? Is there going to be a comet or an asteroid that's going to strike us? I didn't know exactly what it would be, but I felt like it was definitely going to be something really huge and the whole world would be watching. And again, when you go back to the Hopi and you read about the Spider Woman and the Cosmic Weaver, where in Hopi cosmology, it talks about the Spider Woman as the primordial weaver who creates the fabric of existence itself. And she does not merely weave physical threads, but timeless worlds and consciousness. And her web is sacred. It's sacred architecture that underlies the structure in which all life connects, communicates, and evolves. And then when the Spider Woman casts her web over the earth, she's not creating a trap, but revealing the hidden connections that have already existed. And I believe that's what really forbidden knowledge is all about. And it's had a huge impact on me creating or becoming this, I guess this vision of forbidden knowledge and what it really meant to me. It was kind of really based on this right here. And so we see that the modern World Wide Web is a physical infrastructure, tangible web of cables, towers, and satellites that carry our data. And we have the digital layer, the software, the protocols, the platforms that organize information and flow. And we have the human interface, our devices, our screens, our avatars through which we interact with the network. And then we have the collective mind, the emerging synthetic intelligence formed by interconnected humans and machines. And now we exist in 2 forms, our physical bodies moving through the natural world and our digital avatars navigating the virtual space, just as the prophecy stated. The prophecy actually manifested this with stunning precision. And it said that we'd be living in 2 worlds, the web over the earth, the internet and global network, the planetary nervous system, and the 2 worlds, physical and digital, split attention and identity. And the illusion world, social media, VR, algorithmic feeds, curated reality bubbles. and the loss of balance, tech addiction, doom scrolling, identity fragmentation. We have more than ever young people committing suicides because they didn't get enough likes or they got some negative comments. We get disconnection from nature itself. People are more on these devices than anything else. And then we would get to the final test, the ethical use of AI, data, and power, the evolution of extinction of spirit. So all this is happening in this exact moment, the evolution of mankind and the precipice that we sit on. What direction will we take? Will we take the path down the left fork in the road or the right fork in the road? And it's all about really education, which is why it's great that Neil and Alan and Debbie, that you're having this conference, because it gives you and people like myself and others a chance to spread some knowledge and some potential wisdom that maybe people will absorb, and they'll begin to take it and emulate it and become teachers themselves. Because when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. But we're all the student and we are all the teachers. And so if we take it from that mindset, it's all about making this type of education and enlightenment duplicatable so we can pass this on from generation to generation so that we actually head into the fifth world and that we don't destroy the fifth world before we get a chance to actually experience it. Because data is the new thread. This is the thread that we're weaving on this planet, right? Digital weavers, programmers, AI engineers, network designers are the new weavers crafting the architecture of our collective reality. We have the algorithmic looms. Machine learning models and predictive engines are serving as looms on which our digital identities are experienced as being woven. And we have our information threads. Every click, every search, every post, every transaction becomes a thread on a larger pattern, revealing who we are and what we desire.
There was a massive display in Farmington, New Mexico on St. Patrick's Day in 1950. This involved hundreds of craft, which were seen by basically at least half the town of Farmington, New Mexico. It's a pretty small town of about 3,000 or 4,000 people, but more in the outlying area. And sometime in the morning, UFOs showed up, 200 or 300 of them, darted around for about an hour, put on this massive display. They were actually photographed, as you can see here. And then they left, but they came back later that day and did another display. This is unprecedented, really, in the UFO literature. There's no other UFO event quite like this, involving that many objects seen by that many people at one time. So why? Why was it appearing on that day? Well, it turns out, and this could be a coincidence, but I don't think so, the discovery of californium was announced on that same day. Californium is a artificially produced nuclear material. There's a really strong nuclear connection to a lot of these UFO sightings. So people have always, often speculated what was going on with this particular wave, which was, by the way, brutally debunked and attempted to be covered up by our own governments. People were threatened. Basically, the Air Force did show up, was very interested in people's accounts, and then told them not to talk about it. So this was a big deal. This was an absolutely amazing UFO event. This was when researchers started to realize that although UFO activity is often somewhat evasive or not in your face, if you know what I mean, sometimes it's the opposite. UFOs want to be seen. They put on a display. It's absolutely what could only be interpreted as some sort of publicity campaign because they want to be seen. It's undeniable just based on their own behavior. Another perfect example of this is the wave over the United States Capitol in 1952. It's funny because as a UFO researcher, I'm often asked, if UFOs are real, why don't they just land on the White House lawn? Well, they pretty much did and probably would have if we had not scrambled jets after them and basically tried to shoot them down. Our response to the UFO presence, particularly the military and our intelligence agencies, has been terrible. And I think this is one of the obstacles to disclosure is our own warlike ways. And in fact, I'll talk about that a little bit later. But absolutely, I think that is one of the problems we have, and that is what is preventing absolute disclosure on the part of ETs. But this event was another absolute display that made it undeniable to everyone, certainly in the United States, that UFOs were real. This was also covered up. It caused the largest press conference up to that date, with General Samford basically saying that all these reports could be explainable as weather inversions. We now know that's absolutely ridiculous. We've got the radar reports. We've talked to people who were there firsthand, who saw this stuff and also saw the radar reports as well. So we know that this was absolutely a real event. Now here's another incident which is virtually unknown. August 5, 1953 at Barber's Point in Oahu, Hawaii. On that day, over 75 craft showed up over Barber's Point and put on a massive display. This went on over a period of hours. Jet fighters were sent up to scramble these objects, had no chance at all of getting anywhere close to them. But the objects wouldn't go away. They kept coming back. One jet fighter actually went up and he says he saw the actual ETs looking out at him through a little window. Completely shook him up. So I looked up, what was going on this day? Well, it turns out there was a major world event. Operation Big Switch took place on that day when the United Nations released 75,000 prisoners of war and sent them back to their country. Again, you can make up your own minds. This could be a coincidence. I don't think so, because again, you look at these major UFO events, there's these weird other connections going on where something is going on in the world that everyone deserves to know about. So yeah, these are UFO displays. These are the UFOs, I think, conducting a very vigorous publicity campaign and basically just announcing their presence. Now we move a couple of years later. I'm taking you through time to the French wave of 1954, October and November. Nothing like this has happened before or since. In those 2 months, there was quite literally 5,000 to 10,000 UFO reports. It was daily, multiple daily. It was centered in France, but also spread out throughout neighboring countries such as Italy and Germany and Spain, and frankly, throughout the world. And it wasn't just sightings. There are well over 200 documented humanoid reports, landings. The whole country was in an uproar. There's been books written about this, several of them. Again, nothing like this has happened before or since. So the question is why? What was going on at that time? Well, according to some researchers, this is when we were just perfecting anti-gravity. This was when CERN was being put in place, not far away from where all of this was taking place. So I think that probably this wave was a reaction to that, because the ETs are watching us very closely. They're keeping tabs on our technology. If you look up rocket launches, you will see there's many, many cases of UFOs tracking rocket launches. Jim and Coral Lorenzen were able to predict UFO sightings. They said whenever there is a new factory or technological base being built, UFOs will show up. And they were able to predict sightings this way. The Russians learned how to do this and were actually able to call down UFOs by sort of mimicking technological events. So the point is, UFOs are watching us very closely and responding to what we are doing here on this planet.
There are UFOs and ETs uncovered by the Chinese. Back in 1994, there was a very well-known incident in the northeastern part of China in which there was a ET contact to like a local farmer who had a very close encounter with the ET who told them that they actually came from the planet Jupiter. And actually that's an incident well documented, reported by the government official media in China. And a lot of journalists and government officials went on site and did an official investigation and confirmed that Mr. Meng, the ET contactee, was not someone who had just the hallucination. Because they went through they had him to conduct all the lie detector tests and psychological examinations and confirmed that he was a regular person. So this is Mr. Meng's incident. There was also another incident in which is so-called the Retrieval of China, in which they recovered a crashed UFO vehicle in Datong City, Shanxi province in China. That's about 2.5 hour drive from Beijing. And it actually occurred in the summer of 1987. A private UFO investigator researched the incident and discovered that the Chinese military, actually retrieved the crashed UFO vehicles by the ETs. And there were 2 injured gray aliens that were sent to the military. But there was little known about what happened to them and what the military did to the crashed ET vehicles. There was also like another incident in China back in December 1999. There's a high school principal called Mr. Cao, and he actually was taken by the ETs to their spacecraft, in which the ETs, who appear to be like the Greys, taught him how to heal a young girl. And they later uncovered that this is like a true healing process done by the ETs, because they discovered that the young girl that Mr. Cao healed really existed. They were able to locate her. And this is like another well-documented investigation by the private investigators in China. So this is one of the just some of the incidents in China. But I want to talk about something that's more profound, more interesting than just the ET contacts in China or the retrievals of crashed vehicles over there. This is about a book that's a best-selling book in China, read by millions of people over there. This is a book about spirituality, written by ET contactee who lived in Australia at that time, who claimed that he was taken by the ETs to their planet for 9 days and then came back. What's interesting was that the book was published in 1993, well before the age of the internet. As you read the book, you're going to discover that a lot of interesting details that the author, a landscaper in Australia, could not have known about, but he wrote about in details, in which we are able to verify nowadays, only nowadays, things about the Project Westward that the US government did in the 1960s, things about the Tomb of Jesus in Shingo Village, Japan, things about the antibacterial effect of blue light and yellow light that Harvard Medical School recently confirmed just a few years ago. So this is something that's really profound, but it also teaches people or tells people about the meaning of life and all the issues that we have been having nowadays on Earth. So this is not just about the UFOs or ETs. This is a book more about spirituality. So I tend to want to compare the disclosure movement in the US and China. If you look at the chart, you're going to see that in the US, the UFO community has been focusing on the crashed ET UFOs and UAPs, and the ET technologies reverse engineered from the crashed UFOs or ET vehicles. However, in China, this is a little bit different, because through the book read by millions of people in China, they have been learning advanced knowledge from ETs whose spacecraft did not and will never crash on Earth. Because as you read the book, you're going to see that the technologies from the ETs who were in contact with the author, are so far more advanced than the Greys, the technologies of the Greys, whose vehicles crashed in Roswell a few decades ago. So the Chinese are actually learning from the masters. the ETs who are far more advanced than the grades that the US government has been focusing on. And also the method of study are also different. In the US, after they recover the crashed vehicles, they get everything done in highly compartmentalized special access programs. So here are some of the examples of the witnesses in the US that appeared publicly recently in the last few years. So we have David Grush, Louis Elizondo, Carnell, and Jake Barber. So they all focused on crashed UAPs. But the ETs whose spacecraft crashed here, that means those ETs have imperfect technologies because their spacecraft crashed. But on the other hand, the ETs described in this book are so far advanced that their spacecraft will never crash. As you read the book, you're going to learn about the psychic development that we can all have, as the ETs have taught us. The ETs also told us about ancient civilizations, such as Lemuria and Atlantis, the paranormal mysteries, such as the Great Pyramid of Egypt as the energy center, the Bermuda Triangle, where planes, ships, and people gone vanish. And also, more importantly, the ETs tell us the meaning of life, which is to grow spirituality, as taught by some of the spiritual leaders in our ancient past, like the ancient scriptures, the Old Testament, the New Testament, the scriptures of Buddhism and other religions. They all get some of the things correctly, but people tend to distort the scriptures for their own purpose, as people can tell from the Bible, because the Catholic Church had several revisions and had different council meetings to decide what need to be put into the Bible in the canonization process. So what do the ETs look like in the book Theory About Prophecy? Well, the ETs from the book Theory About Prophecy, they are really tall and beautiful. They're 9 or 10 foot tall, they're beautiful, and they can perform all the miracles as performed by Christ, as documented in the New Testament of the Bible. They're forever young, they don't age at all, because they can generate and regenerate their body cells and tissues. They're always happy. And when the author, Michel de Marquet, encountered them, he describes them as people who always seem to have good news coming to them in every second, like every minute, because they're always very happy. They're highly spiritual with compassion and love, and they live on a planet in which the author describes as the golden planet, because as he approached the planet in their spaceship, he saw golden mist surrounding the planet, a very beautiful planet with vibrant colors. And they can communicate with each other and the author through telepathy. They can levitate. They can materialize anything they want to, like objects and food, just like what Jesus or Christ did. And they can also heal all the diseases you can think of. And actually, when they put their hand on the shoulder of the author, Michel, and Michel actually felt a kind of magnetic vibrational frequency, like in his physical body, that made him feel extremely comfortable. Is really difficult to describe in any language in the world.